Dana, welcome back to the podcast. Good to have you again.
Oh, I'm so pumped. I'm pumped to be here. This is
Yeah.
my first interview in my new place. I just
Yeah.
moved, so
Well, I'm glad. There you go. It's good to have you. I was looking back. It's been 3.5 years since you're on the
holy
podcast. A
moly.
long time.
Really?
A lot has happened in the world in that time.
Yes. So much stuff. Actually, yeah, and I think but more than people realize. I think people are different more than people realize. We see this in marketing right now.
Yeah.
There are big changes that are that are starting to become um, really evident. I think for anybody in business or marketing online now, which is just interesting to watch.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Well, we went for that period of time after the financial crash in '08 of like growth, growth, growth. Everything was like accelerated. And then there's just been this time, obviously, with the pandemic, I mean, this time of uncertainty, it seems like. Of like there's question marks. What's going on in the world? What's going on financially? Like where are we at? And I think that's maybe have given some people some pause. I mean, you're probably seeing that in your business, I bet.
Oh yeah, we've done a whole training on the three big things that change in human behavior when we're in what we call a hesitant market. And a hesitant market is interestingly where people psychologically, whether it's true or not, drop down into survival mode.
Hmm.
They drop down into like when gas is more expensive and there's you know unrest somewhere in the world or any of those things. Yeah, and the few things that they start to do is number one is they no longer buy leisurely, like even small things. They think more about whether it's a good purchase. They want to make good decisions because
Hmm.
uncertainty, like it's like moms feel this a lot. You're uncertain whether you're going to screw your kid up. You're uncertain in business whether it's going to anything's going to work. You want little bits of certainty, and so buying decisions become things that they would normally have just spent money on, not thought about it. They're thinking about it more. They also willpower. So there's selective willpower, and what that means is like they will go through and they'll go, okay, for me it might be eating, right? It's like, okay, when I'm in this time of uncertainty, I will give myself permission to not have willpower in what I eat, and I'll because this is going to help me, like I deserve this, I need this.
There's
And for some people
justification
that might
there.
be, yeah, for some people that might be not not getting good rest, it might be drinking, it might be eating, it might be overworking, it might be like we all have our thing, it might be spending too much money on clothes, not spending money on anything, like we all have that thing. And so if you sell that thing in a different time, they'd be like, I'm going to work on this and I'm going to be better at this. So I'm going to purchase and spend money on it. But in a time of hesitancy, you might be that thing that they follow you, tell you I love you because it feels like I'm doing enough, but have already given themselves permission to not work on that thing at all.
Mm.
And so what we see is really confusing buying behavior because people will look like they're excited, they'll look like they want it, and they won't spend the money. And it's hard for marketers to know. So there's these like interesting psychological things that happen when we're in this market, and with the pandemic, and then I think like a overabundance of info products, like basically like you go in and everybody's selling courses, everybody's selling things, everybody's ads for all that stuff. We and the pandemic put together have moved us into a space of community, of needing people. So what we're finding is people are actually wanting to purchase more smaller spaces, more mastermind
Mm.
space, more spaces that are connected. Like people are yearning for connection with the right kind of people. They're trying to figure out where their village is because everything's been disrupted. And so we believe that we're moving. There was like 2000 to 2010 was like the age of blogging. 2010 to 2020 was like the age of like the info products. And 2020 to 2030, we think is going to be the age of networking. We think we're going to get back to actual like networking and connecting in people because we need it so much. And I think for most people online, they find that they just don't have the ability to do the scaling of passive income and things that everybody is sold as the dream. It's
Right.
just way harder to actually execute that and make the content that fulfills that traffic, that I think most people are recognizing, oh, I can make really good money in smaller spaces, in smaller groups,
Yeah.
doing bigger things.
Well, and I also find it's kind of this idea of the opposites. Like it's kind of like with AI, right? Everyone's rushing to AI. Well, then you really want custom work by a human is like the opposite side of it. It's the same thing with
Hmm.
community. Because I agree with that. It's like as much as everyone's like, oh, I'm going to connect online and we're going to do all this. I want to go in person with a small group and really build a bond with someone. So it's kind of a change, obviously, than what we had many years ago. How does that change your business then? Even in 3.5 years since we talked last, and obviously you can take it since 2015 when you started. Like, how is the dynamic of where the world's at today have shifted your business with the way you're trying to run it or grow it, I guess?
Well, some of it's more the way I've shifted, right? Like there's the way we think about our marketing, but ultimately, generally, we either stop getting excited about something or it doesn't work because we're not putting in the same effort, or we just don't enjoy what we're doing anymore. And one of the things I talk about a lot is scars versus wounds. So I'll like a lot of women in my audience, we have to have this discussion that a lot of them want to sell something that they fixed for themselves, right?
Mhm.
I got healthier in this way. I built this thing. I grew a whatever. What we see though is in the wanting to be transparent and authentic and all this kind of stuff is what they do is they share it when it's still too, if you get divorced, you don't, and then you had this amazing ability to like transform this, you got to wait until it's a scar, right? You got to wait until you're not emotional about it. You got to wait until you've got lessons learned. You've got your hero's journey. You have like a system that they can use. And so when I got started, I was in the wound, right? I like had just quit my job. I was trying to figure it out. I just had babies. I was like somebody that really is not a kid person, to be perfectly honest. Like I adore my children, but I'm a person who has a lot of things I want to do for myself in my life, figuring out my identity. I started the Boss Moms community and space and wrote the book because I needed it. It was my therapy, right? I was in the wound. I wasn't teaching them how to do the mom stuff. I needed somebody to help me get through it. What I ended up doing is selling that group marketing and sales and things, the stuff that I was good at, the stuff that I didn't have wounds. They were all they were all scars of like learning lessons. Well, over the years, I felt more and more disconnected with the community I'd built. And Facebook. The change in the market is just Facebook and Facebook groups. They don't do for you what they did. All the algorithm stuff. Facebook tries to do stuff and then they're bad at it, and so they basically just mucked up their own water. And it's really hard to get visibility, get connection in there. I think Facebook groups will still work beautifully for people that are local groups, product, like local running groups and things like that. But yeah, so what happened is I just stopped for the last couple years. I haven't been in that group. I haven't enjoyed the group. I haven't been feeling it. Like the way to pull people in, that they're the less of the right people. And so when I went to go, I've always wanted an app. I wanted a productivity app that was a Boss Mom app. It was like on my bucket list to have $1 million app.
Mhm.
And when I went to go look at getting that developed, I was like, now feels like the time. And they said, do you want it to have a community component? And I like burst out and I was like, no, I don't want to talk to anybody. Everybody sucks. I don't want to talk to anybody. And I was like, and then I sat back that night and I was like, God, why would I say that? I love people. Like I'm a people person and I love community and I love being helpful. And I love bringing people together, like being the reason two people meet. If I could have been a matchmaker in another life, like I would have, like, I love it. It feels so good to me. And so I had to really sit down, and it was the Facebook group. It was the way things are running. It was that I had built it out of this wound, but now I've got all these, they're all scars. I want to be a mentor. I want to teach in this way. I don't want to be in this space where I'm pretending my kids are 2 and it's hard. Like my kids are 9 and 11. My life is way easier, right? And I have an established business. I have all these things. So then I went and saw Dune 2 by myself because I like to see a movie by myself, and I have
Okay.
like a movie subscription. I love a good theater. And I can't, and in there, I won't spoiler alert, but like in there, he has to make this decision to really just leave this entire old life. And in order to be like their prophet, right? He's got to like go and do this thing. And he actually has to like drink this poison and die and like come back to life, basically. And it just was very like inspiring. And I came out and I voxered my team and I was like, we're closing the group. Like we're not just building this app, and because we had decided we were gonna build the app and make it community. Like I really did want community. I just wanted it to be somewhere else. I was like, no, we're gonna close the app. We're gonna close it. We're gonna get rid of it. Like everybody's gonna have to come over with us. And I was like, and we're gonna make it paid. It's not gonna be free. Like it was gonna be this other free space. And I was like, because we're gonna shift it. Like I can see, and this shift, I want it. We're gonna be all in. And 30 days after that, we had, gotten moved over our 500 founding members from our big group. We closed down the group. It was intensely liberating, super scary. And now we're in this that was in April. So that was, we're coming into the second to, about 8 weeks after, and we're in this flow of like reinventing the content we're talking about and reinventing the things that we're doing. And there's some things that are still the same. We're right in the middle of a launch of our Nurture to Convert coaching certification and things, but ultimately, like, we want Boss Mom to become the voice and the advocate for moms. The Boss Mom Plus app that we came out with, it went from being just this community where we could all be together, and we are looking to create a completely different social networking platform because it's its own app that you can download. Where there are moms don't have to be on Instagram if they don't want. They don't have to, like, we all get in with thinking we're going to do one thing and then we get distracted by a million things. Like, we need less distractions. We need more facilitation. Like, we need more of a place we can trust with people we can trust. So we're going to start doing that. We're going to also start doing there is no good data for moms and business. I don't even think there's good data on what business really looks like today for people who have multiple businesses, because it's
Hmm.
not like, oh, I'm an entrepreneur and I got funding and I started this one thing and I've got one focus. Most of my market has two or three kinds of jobs, right? And they're
Okay.
doing them. And so we're going to start doing surveys. We're going to start putting out numbers. We're going to start, like, in 5 years from now, when people go to quote what business looks like for women, they're going to quote Boss Mom. Like, they're going to quote our stats. So we're within our community and our space. We're starting to pull numbers on different things. We're going to start putting out studies, and we want to we're rewriting the Boss Mom book. So I've moved from the beginning to being, I need a community because I need a community. And then I need to figure out how to sell to that community. And now 8 years later, I have come through, like, all the flames of the things. I have gotten all of the scars, and I'm
Mhm.
seeing what the market really, really needs. And we're shifting to become, now that we have the clout, we've been around long enough
Sure, sure.
to have that clout, to become like the real voice for moms in a really meaningful way. So a lot of that is me shifting and me seeing things, and then me having the backing of the brand we've built, and my confidence to be able to shift into something that's really scary because it's bigger. But we're excited to do it. And I think that's just the evolution of age, and I'd say wisdom, maybe. I don't know. We'll see.
Um, I guess you get wisdom with age and experience, right? So, I mean, there's something in there, good or bad. What's as the app launched?
Yeah, so we launched in April. We brought over our
Okay.
founding members. So we've got, about 550 founding members, and then now we're working on all of the things to like start bringing in, like, consistent. So the goal is that we're 2,000 by the end of this year, 5,000 members by May of next year, and 10,000 by the end of next year. And at 10,000, that is an ecosystem. When we have 10,000 women by the end of next year, that means that they could all just hire each other, and they would not have to go on any other social platform, and they could all just hire each other and have six-figure businesses.
Mm.
So we're saying our motto is that it takes a village, like we've built you a city. Like, that's it. We're
Okay. What's the if you're speaking to a mom, let's say, what's the advantage of them coming on the app? Like, what did they? Because obviously we know the advantages and disadvantages of, like, Instagram. Like, what is for the app? What are, like,
Mhm.
the big things they're gonna get away from, like, an Instagram or something like that?
Yeah. Well, a couple of things. So, number one is it has a lot of the functions that you would get in a Facebook group. So, it's got the ability to ask questions, get support. We teach them how to do our engaging questions so that you can market research, build buzz, and get clients all at the same time. So, we have a methodology we've been teaching people for a long time. They've all gotten clients from our free group. So, you come into this space. Since it's paid, and since the way we're curating it, it's all women you can trust. There's no spam. There's no people that are cold DMing you a bunch of stuff. You don't get any of the distractions when you come into our space and our app. It's just the community, the space. There's a place for collaborations. There's a place for
Mhm.
features. There's a place for all of those things. It's really cleanly. We're using Circle as our tool, and then we just paid to make it our own
Okay,
app. So we're using their
gotcha.
functionality. And so it works beautifully. It's such a seamless process when you come in. We're doing monthly live facilitated network and masterminding calls. So we have our first one next week. It's got about 120 women already signed up. We'll have breakout rooms. So there'll be facilitation. What we want to do is we want to teach women how to get back into the actual just networking, the
Mhm.
networking and connection, and the hiring each other and that whole process. So a lot of what is getting everybody excited is the lack of distraction, like the clean and the simpleness of it. the actual like the connection and the networking. So you're going to find your friends, you're going to find your collaborators, you're going to find places to get featured, to feature people, to to find your clients, to make sales, and all of those things. And then we show you exactly how to do that in the space,
Mm.
like we used to do in our Facebook group, but there was nothing that we could control. There was still so much mess. It was costing
Yeah.
me $1,000 a month just to try and keep it safe for
Yeah.
everybody. And still then it was intensely difficult. So I think that lack of distraction, the simplicity of the space and the place where it is their networking space is really enticing to my women. Because most of my women don't want to create a bunch of like Instagram, you've got to create constant content all the time, right? With podcasts and YouTube channel, like those would be great, except for most of my women don't have the space to record. They don't have the quietness. They don't have the time. They don't have the, the facility to like get everything edited and done and like all of that process. And so really helping a lot of our women get back to the roots of connections and collaborations being one of the big ways that they get business.
Mm. What are you finding? Again, it goes if you had to compare it to 9 years ago, or
Yeah.
today, like where are women having the biggest struggle starting a business? Like, is
Well,
it confidence? If you go back to the time, like, oh my God, financially they're tight, so I don't want to take the risk. Like, what are you finding maybe is why they don't start today?
well, I think there's two things. So this one is on the money side, and I think a lot of people are seeing online and being told how easy it is, but they're in survival mode, so they don't have the funds to fund the support they would need for
Mhm.
somebody to help. Because there's just too many. Even with content creation, doing it all on your own is very difficult. You can either be a content creator, you can be an expert. It's very hard to do both and wear all the hats. So I think they come in not having any funds, then they have to figure it all out themselves, and then you get into this cycle of like rushing to try and figure out to make money. So then you can't really be nurturing or authentic, and then that all ends up being a catch 22. So I think that's one thing. But ultimately, I think it's decision fatigue. I think there's just so many options. Shoot, I mean, picking the email tool that you use. And now, like with Go High Level, it's not even just picking if you want Go High Level, it's which white labeled Go High Level do you want? And everybody's pitching you on like everything. There's just a million tools for everything. There's a million methodologies. I've been at an event years ago where someone came out and they're like, Dana, what the heck do I do? Like I just went up and I asked Amy Porterfield and she told me that I need to make a course. Like I just asked, Jenna Kutcher and she said I need to be on Pinterest. Like I just asked James Whitmore and
Yeah.
he said like they went through the list. They're like, which one do I do? And so I think that's part of what is good about coming like our Boss Mom space is we're telling our moms like come in and trust our methodology because it was built for moms. And so what I think people are moving more towards is trying to figure out who to listen to because what they'll do is back in the day it was like, oh, I like Tony Robbins, I will watch and listen to all of his things because I have to buy his CDs and I have to like go to his events. Now I can listen to 8 podcasts and 8 books by 8 different people with 8 different methodologies and I get ads and AppSumo telling me all these things. I think decision fatigue is the biggest problem. They get frozen because they don't know what is the right one, what is the right methodology, and it is very difficult when you don't know, when you don't feel confident to make the right decision. It is very difficult to get behind a particular methodology and do it and implement it and put it into practice because it takes being scared and having it not work at first to continue to do it until it works. And if you aren't sure if it was the right methodology to begin with, then you don't have the courage that goes behind it to get it done. I think that's the biggest problem. I think we're just missing good mentorship because I think a lot of people have started doing insanely, ridiculously expensive group coaching programs that don't actually deliver a bunch. I think that then you're getting a bunch of stuff that's free that doesn't do a bunch. I think there's a weird pricing dynamic that happens, and I think it just gets very confusing for everybody.
In line with the decision fatigue, like this paradox of choice, there's so many options. How much of it, because I've been trying to, this is one of the big nuts I've been trying to crack is the just gets like, why don't people get started and why don't they stick with it? And one of the things I've come up with, I feel close on, is that they haven't discovered themselves. And so they're looking outwardly of, oh, Tony Robbins does this or so and so does this. Oh, that would be cool versus no, I would love to talk about gardening because that's my joy that I actually love doing. But yet they're too scared to do that because it doesn't seem like, oh, can I grow a business that way? Do you find a lot of it's just not trusting their own selves and what they want to
Yeah, well, and
do?
I love that you mentioned that because so our nurture to convert marketing system, it's like
Mhm.
I'm not coaching on it anymore. So we have a certification now that we're doing. So it's like we're helping to disseminate it out. But a lot of what people hire me for is this nurture to convert system, and it's based around creating a movement, right? Being
Mhm.
something that you're passionate about, and so one of the things we have them go through is your opinions and your movement manifesto. So if you want to get people excited about what you're doing and it helps your business and it's what's working online, you have to show them what's broken with the world and your shared vision of the future. And then the things that
Mm.
you do help fix it, right?
Right.
And so, what's interesting about what you said is that because it's true that most people don't know who they are, what they want, they don't know what they're willing to fight for. Like, if you're not willing to fight for it, then you're not willing to be in pain in order to
Right.
get it, right? Which means whenever something feels like it's not working, you're going to jump to a different thing, and that never works. It's like that video you can watch where it's like there's $1 million in one of these holes, and so you could either dig one hole and you've got a third of a chance of hitting $1 million. But if you try and dig all three holes during the hour that you get, you won't get anything. Like it's that
Yeah.
idea of like the digging the deep. And so I think what happens is they like they go in and they try and use somebody else's strategy, but they don't find themselves. When we do our kind of messaging, why it's so great, especially for moms who are searching for identity, is that you are forced not to do figure out who your ideal client is first. Like that's fourth or fifth. First, what you have to decide is what you want to get ranty about, like what you feel like is broken with the world, right? Like,
Mhm.
I wish the world were like this. Like, I think we don't do this right culturally. Like, I think this doesn't work the way I want. And then we help you brainstorm out what that looks like from a social content and all that kind of stuff. But what it does is we find like intense aha moments happening from people where they realize, I don't care enough about this to to talk
Right.
about it for 2 years. Like, or I've had this happen with a client recently. They're like, I don't feel like I'm an expert enough. And I knew they were going to do this, by the way. Like half the time, coaches that have been in this for a long time, it's going to take them 3 months of going through this thing they think they want to do. And then they come back to the fact that he's an actual builder and was want a YouTube channel. He's trying to start a YouTube channel on biohacking. And then really what he is he's an expert builder, like this beautiful art, these beautiful things. Like getting back to all of a sudden now 3 months in, it's like, oh, why don't I do this? Like this is what I'm a master at. This is what I'm really good at. But he was excited about the other thing because he was in the middle of it. He was in the wounds of like of doing these things to make his life better. So that's what I think. I think you're dead on. I think that most people though won't take the time to do self-discovery. That's why I love our nurture and convert marketing, because it allows for the self-discovery in service of marketing, which is what they
Mm.
will spend time and effort on. So you get both the best of both worlds. But I think you're dead on that people don't know. So they're searching for something. And I think it's that they don't have an idea they're willing to fight for. And therefore you're just not willing to put in the effort necessary to get through the hard stuff.
Mm. Are you finding too, I mean, and maybe this has always been the case, but most of the moms, they're trying to build this as like a side business to start, right? Like they probably have a full-time job, or are you finding a lot of them are they're home with their kids or something like that, and this is they want to start a business, never have. Like what are you finding is kind of maybe the percentages on one side or the other, I guess?
I'd say it's a smaller percent within my space that are. I think more of the people who still have jobs are finding Jenna Kutcher first and things like that, right?
Oh,
Um, I think for us, when they get to Boss Mom, the majority of them are home with their kids. We get a lot of
okay.
women who are homeschooling. Homeschooling is becoming a lot more popular. We get a lot of women who are pregnant, so they're on maternity leave.
Okay.
We get a lot of women who have a side job already, but they're trying to fill in the gap. We do have maybe like 20% that have a job or career, but we get a lot of women who are like therapists, used to be big in corporate, and they got burnt out and they left, so they have the funds to like figure themselves out. Or they're a therapist. We have a ton of therapists in all different industries of therapy and wellness and things like that that just don't like the way the world works anymore. They don't like their industry. We get a ton of women, and that's why our marketing works so well. And what you were just talking about finding yourself is because they're like, I don't want to be a part of the system anymore. I don't want to be a part of this system, whether it's wellness, whether it's mental health, whatever. It's like, I want to do it differently, and my industry won't let me do it
Mm.
differently. And so I'm going to break out and come over here. Or they're in industries that like news, we get a lot of news anchors, we get a lot of lawyers, we get a lot of doctors that are like, you cannot have children and have this job. Like this job is not built for having a family. And so they've left to do something different because their job just isn't accommodating.
Okay. So you're fine. So, I mean, which is good because a lot of those, they're eager. It's not because I found this is always the thing that comes up. Like someone has a full-time job and they're like, oh, I really want to build this business. And it's kind of the question of, well, if are you willing to put in an hour a week on this? Because if you're not willing to put an hour a week, how are you going to do it for 10 hours a week or 20 hours a week? You know what I'm saying? So it seems like obviously with who you're working with, they're eager. They're like, hey, listen, you know what? I want to do something like this is going to be my next chapter. So there's probably more buy-in, I guess, on that versus someone that's kind of dipping their toe. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, I think we get a ton of buy-in. Super eager because they want the dream. They want more time, they want less stress. They want, they
Mhm.
want what all everybody wants. And with moms, I think you get the extra eagerness because we lose a part of our identity when we become kids. Like I talk about this a lot on parenting podcasts where I'm like, hey, we were fully formed human beings who had dreams of our own before we had children. But moms, I'm sure there are dads that feel this way, but I don't know how that feels. So, but I know moms
Mhm.
feel this tug of being like, well, now my children are my purpose, which is not how I believe. I don't believe your children are your purpose at all. I think they are a part of you and your life, and you have mentorship requirements and leadership requirements in order to raise good children, but your children are not meant to be assumed up into you. Like they are meant to go forward without you. So I think that's what happens is moms have this massive identity crisis, and then they see an opportunity to feel fulfilled as a adult human being doing something meaningful. And I think that's what drives a lot of our moms is they feel so alone and so lost because being a mother in 99% of the time isn't enough. It just isn't enough. And they feel massively guilty about it because they feel terrible that having their children isn't enough. And I'm like, "No, you're a human being. Having your kids was never meant to be enough. You're supposed to show your kids what a good life looks like, not
Yeah.
sacrifice your life for your kids." Like those are two separate things. I think that's the big driver for moms. I think they just run into what we were talking about before, which is they're willing to work. They just don't know what to work on, and then they work on the wrong things. They work on a bunch of stuff that doesn't matter, usually because it's the easier stuff.
Yeah. Well, and it goes back to the confidence, right? If you haven't been in that position before, there's that imposter syndrome of, am I even good enough to do this? Like that was
Yeah.
I mean, male, female, I don't think it matters. Like even when I went through, it was like that's why I have my question on my mirror in my bathroom. It says, "Why can't it be you?" I have to keep asking myself over and over because it's like for the longest time I was like, that's for someone else. Like I'm not a children's book author, or I'm not a podcaster or anything like that. So I think we all go through that as like, am I even good enough to do this? And I think once we grab hold and like, look, I'm going to take control of this. I am good enough. I think to your point, that's where you get this massive like move in the right direction of, okay, what can I do? And now all of a sudden you
Yeah.
get people that are really bought into building their business. And you see that obviously people filter out all the time. It's just like people that go to the gym at the beginning of January, you have those people too. So I know what you mean.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting what you said too, because being seen, I don't think people will go, oh, I'm just going to start posting on social media. I'm just going to make videos. I'm just going to do the thing. And they don't realize that being seen is very scary, right? And
Mm.
being seen and having a voice and all those things that in a lot of ways growing up as a kid, we are told to be quiet. We're told that like we're not told to be outgoing and boisterous. We're told that's just not really
Mm.
culturally for the most part how we're brought up. So I think then a lot of we grow up kind of hiding the parts of ourselves to be what other people want, especially people pleasing women, and things like that. So yeah, and I think that there's a ton that comes up personally when you have to be seen and have to be visible. The one thing I would say, like when somebody asks themselves, like, "Am I good enough?" Right? It's so funny because I'll tell people instead of being like, "Of course you're good enough," I'll tell them it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. Like you being good enough is not what is going to make you successful. Like you being worthy enough, you being lovable enough, you being likable, none of those things just there's
Mhm.
tons of people who are unlikable that have been successful. There's tons of people who are introverts who've been unsuccessful or have been successful. There's tons of people who have no idea what they're doing and have managed to be
Yeah.
successful. I'm like, your worthiness is just a self construct that we think. It has nothing to do. The only thing it does is it keeps you from taking action. Action is the only thing. Like and just not letting it be a part of your identity. Like someone didn't follow you, that lead magnet isn't working, like your podcast isn't getting the views right now. It's all just data. Like once you've been like in sales as long as I have, you just learn everything is numbers. It's all just data. There's a really good book called Living Untethered. I know he's written other books, like Untethered Soul or things like that. But it really just gets you to recognize that you are not the center of the world. In fact, you have nothing to do with it. Most of what's happening in the world, even if it's interacting with you, has nothing to do with you. All the stuff that's not working, it has nothing to do with you or your worthiness or anything. It's just data. You just got to
Yeah.
look and go, let's play around with it. And so once you really settle into that and you recognize that you and your worthiness has very little to do with what success looks like, then you can start going, oh, well, if my identity has nothing to do with it, like that's
Yeah.
not a playing factor, then it's all just information. And I just am giving myself the ability to play around with the information I'm given. Like I'm doing this blog thing, it's not working. Okay. How do I decide if I stay here or not? Like, oh, I'm doing this thing, it's not working. Okay. How do I do it? And most of the people that are successful, they're doing it, tweaking it until they get to the 20% that works. And then they just pour the flame on the 20%.
Yeah.
Like that has not changed since my entire time of being. Like that is the mentality. And whenever I slip into the mentality of being it's about me, what's wrong with me, why isn't somebody buying that thing? Like I go back to that book or I go get a therapist or a life coach to talk me out of it, to bring me back to the simplicity of it has nothing to do with me. I am not the center.
Well, and something I want to make sure that doesn't get lost there, where you talk about like, oh, let's say I'm writing blogs, I'm doing a podcast. I don't know if it's working. I got to tweak it. It's the act of you're actually doing it. It's the consistency over and over and over. And by the way, I see you're up to like 650 podcast episodes. That's
It's a
impressive.
lot.
It's a lot. Yeah,
It's
that's good. Well, but it's one of those things like you don't know how that potentially helps you or whatever with your business or how that's impacting people always, but it's that if you don't do them, you know that you can't move forward in that direction. So it's like I'm going to have zero podcasts going forward if I don't do it, and that's the thing I think is just chipping away. I've come back. I guess I've gone probably in the last, especially year. It's simplicity. It's literally the simplest answer is normally the right one. Show up, be consistent, try to work hard, try to be curious about it, and just keep chopping wood. And yes, it may not work out and you have to diverge from that path, but you need a path to be on to even diverge from. You know what I'm saying? Like you got to
Mhm.
start and keep moving forward. That's how I think about it. It's just so simple. I think it goes back to what we talked about at the beginning. I think a lot of people are overcomplicating it nowadays.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
They
Yeah,
want to.
overcomplicating. Yeah, overcomplicating and like creating some space where if people go great, like awesome, Brian, I'm going to do it, I'm going to just keep going, I'm going to chip away, and then they come up to this thing where they realize like they're procrastinating, like they can't get themselves to do the next step even if they know what the next step is. Like that's one of the places I see people get stuck a lot. And what you do then is you stop for a moment and it's a brainstorming session, right? You do a mind map and go, okay, what's this thing in the center, this next thing? I'm going to start this YouTube channel. I'm going to create this content. I'm going
Mhm.
to make this, I made a course and I'm not selling it, right? Like what the heck? Why am I not doing the next step when I know what the next step is?
Mhm.
And when you brainstorm that out and you discuss that with people that you trust, and you start to look at what is it, right? What is it that's causing me to procrastinate? Sometimes it's that you've made the project too big. Like, oh, I'm going to write a book today. And you just have on your calendar, right? Like you haven't broken the project down. Like
Mhm.
sometimes it's recognizing there's some self-sabotaging behavior there of the way you think about money and success, the way you think about being visible, the whatever, being scared to share this opinion or not feeling like you're not going to be able to deal with it if people don't like you, or what happens if you fail. Like, so what you do is when you brainstorm it out, there's this massive, like just like with therapy, like you're talking it out.
Mhm.
Just getting it out of your brain, like just getting out what's your worry of your brain. And then you can go, okay, well, if I'm like, I've been on a call with somebody where I've done this practice with them because they just weren't putting this course out. And as we did the brainstorming, there's this huge like part of it that was like, what if it goes so well that I'm like Oprah and then I don't ever see my kids again because I'm so busy and now this thing has taken over my life. And I was
Mm.
like, wow, that is an interesting fear to have. Not the fear
Yeah.
of failure, but the fear of success and how it will take you away from the things that are important to you. Okay, let's talk through that. What would have to happen for that to actually happen? And if it did, how strong are you to actually make the decisions to not let that? And we talked through that, and just having that conversation, she's like, oh my God, yeah, I wouldn't matter how successful I am. I would never let my relationship with my kids. That's so important to me. And her kids are older,
Mhm.
like in going into college. Yeah. And just that process. And then she's like, okay. And just talking through that, then all of a sudden she's like, yeah, I'm going to sell it. Like what? Obviously, but it's that conversation. So it's if you feel like you're stuck and you're not taking steps you should take when the action should be as simple as we're talking about, stepping back, talking with somebody, doing a mind mapping, brainstorming, like those kind of depends on if you're introvert or extrovert, right? And where you get your energy. It can be insanely cathartic because it helps you realize some of the fears you have that are almost conscious but kind of subconscious that can really just keep you from continuing.
Yeah. Well, I do like that brainstorming. So so on that note, I know last time you're on, I always like to ask advice about, how to get started, but I've changed my tune on this recently
Oh.
because I think, advice is good, but a lot of it's experience. You have experiences. Some people can't necessarily relate. So what I like, because you said the word action earlier, I'm going to ask you this is give an action for people to do. It could be a question that they should ponder. Maybe it's a challenge for them to get started today.
Mhm.
What would you share, just thinking that out loud, in terms of an action, question, challenge, etc., to help people get started, maybe to kick them in the butt?
Yeah, my favorite would be from our like the nurture to convert our opinions. We call it our nurture messaging. Is there's like 4 or 5 things in there, but number one you'd start with is your opinions, industry opinions. So you just sit down with the sheet of paper, right? And you just ask the question like, what's broken with the world? Right. Now, if you know what kind of industry you're in, you just don't know what you're gonna do, that kind of thing. But if you have no idea, you just know you want to start something, what's broken with the world, right? So you'll sit down, and I've had done this exercise with a ton of people. We've had thousands of people go through the exercise, um, and they'll come in, they'll be like, I don't like the way the school system works, right? Like I
Mhm.
don't like the way this happens with doctors. Like I don't like the way like women do this thing. Like I don't like the way people think about this. Like I don't like the way this particular idea or product gets treated. Like I don't like the way blank. So it's like I don't like the way this feels broken. This feels unfair, right? Like
Mhm.
these people are hurting and they don't have a way to fix it, right? So it's like, what's broken with the world? Like for us, a lot of what we end up talking about is like, I just think that moms don't like, we had this revolution where women could do anything. But now women are mainly just doing everything. And it's just it's broken because it came out of this good idea for women to be empowered.
Mhm.
But then we were never given a support. We have less support for being a parent now than we did back in the day because we have less community, right?
Mhm.
Physical community. Oh my God, we just have women that feel alone and are floundering. Like parenting in my mind has become better in the sense of our ability to understand how to parent better. And it has become infinitely harder to execute as human beings, in a way that isn't overwhelming. And that is part of what's broken. I figured that out while writing the Boss Mom book back in 2015, but I've honed in on that. And we constantly redo this exercise every quarter of the opinion. So I would say this is a great place because from there, you can decide what you want to fix. From there, you can cross out the things that you're too scared to be vocal about or the things that you have no expertise in. And you're
Mhm.
going to drill it down to 1 or 2 things that you're like, oh crap, I could talk about that all day.
Mhm.
Like I've been homeschooling my kids for 5 years. Like I could talk about how we do it my special way all day. I've been in an RV with my family for 2 years and we all quit our jobs and we work remotely. Like I could talk about how to do that all day long, because I believe that the world telling you that real estate is the best investment of your life is a bad idea. Like I've got opinions about that. So when you have opinions, you can get ranty. And when you can get ranty, you can get a following. We can get a following, you can get a loyalty. We can get a loyalty, you can get sales. Like all of that. And they will tell you what they want you to make. All of that will flow. But if you're not willing to get ranty, you're just going to be part of the noise. So it's always, in my opinion, the best first step.
Awesome. No, I love that. And do you go, and this might be step two potentially, but I'm kind of curious, like once you sit, let's say it's education system, do you drill deeper to get more specific? Is that that's the goal? I'm
Yeah, so it's
assuming.
all we drill down into like this is what's broken. This is why we think it's broken. This is, who we think is to blame for it because in marketing there's a common enemy. Like, we all have to sugar can be a common enemy, right? Like there's all the things. So figuring out what that common enemy is. And then we move into the movement manifesto and your movement manifesto is the vision of the future. This is I want to live in a world where like I believe this to be true. Like if everybody only knew this. And that's where we
Mhm.
share this. So now we've got what's broken. Now we vision. And then in the middle, what we do is we take what we call your results framework and we go, then what do you know that you can build out that helps them get from here to here? That helps solves
Mm.
this problem. And so that's where we take it from being the thing. But ultimately all of that like ends up being the stuff that works on social media. That's what's so interesting is the opinions,
Yeah.
the what's broken, denormalizing the pain, like pouring, catalyst, like all these different terms that we use on like the way to do conversion
Mhm.
marketing is all based around opinions, movement manifesto. Like that's what's working online right now. And it creates this movement feeling. And movement by definition is action, right? And
Yeah.
so if you can create people feeling drawn to you, then you can actually be a really crappy marketer. You can be bad with your graphics. You can have a brand that is confusing. You can have all. You can literally so many sins can be forgiven about how
Right.
bad you are at other things if you inspire people and motivate them and make them want to be a part of the vision of the future, and that you both agree on what's broken. There's camaraderie there. Like
Yeah.
it's a really beautiful way that humans work. I mean, it's a terrible analogy, but it's the way cults work. Like
Mm.
you bring them in and you get them. I mean, ultimately, all we're doing is we're brainwashing people, de-brainwashing. We're basically saying you believe all these things to be true, but I want to live in a world where those things aren't true, and we're going to change. And people go,
Yeah.
I want to be a part of that. It's like having a church, like all of those things. They're just used in negative ways a lot of times, but you can use it in an inspiring, motivational way. And yeah,
Yeah.
so starting with the opinions and then moving from there is just a great place to start.
Mm. I love that, Dana. Yeah, this was a lot of fun. I appreciate you coming back on. Where can people say hello to you online? Any great spots where you're besides the app,
Yeah.
but like just online in
Yeah,
general, where can
yeah,
say
yeah. So just boss-mom.com gets you to our site. So it'll show you all the things. We've been spending a ton more time on Instagram. So if you just look up Dana Malstaff on Instagram, that's where we're putting a lot of the content. You can see a lot of what I'm talking about now into action as well, and see kind of how we do that. But yeah, those are basically the main places. If you go to the boss-mom.com, that'll get you to the app, to the podcast, or a YouTube channel, to like all the places with all the content.
cool. Dana, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate you coming back on.
Oh, thanks for having me.